Oh. Hello and welcome back to Down the Slope. Another season has come and gone for the Hibs. I am joined by Liam and Dave. Liam, 23-24 is finished, but there's still a lot going on at Hibs. How are you?
I'm doing well. It's obviously been quite a hectic week in the life of Hibernian. Been quite a lot going on this week, so we finally got ourselves together and decided to put out an episode to react to all, which I'm quite excited to do. Quite a lot to get off the chest. I
Yeah.
think everyone's in that place at the moment.
Dave, how are you? Are you happy to see the end of this season?
Uh, aye, but it's not really the end of the season yet. There's a very important game on Thursday at Easter Road, where finally we're bringing in that defender that they've been looking for to sit next to Paul Hanlon when I take the pitch at 1:30 and then give myself a heart attack probably. So
So,
yeah, once that's done, I'll
is
be
that
I'll be happy to see the end of it.
is that like the play on the pitch thing and you
No,
weren't
it's not the
or
seven
is that
aside thing. It's something to do with the Hanlon Stevenson Foundation. They just put a thing out saying chuck a tenner in, go into the draw, you can win boots thing. And I'm thinking, oh, I might get some boots. That'd be handy. And then it came up when I was lying on Sunday morning with a bit of a hangover. I'm like, oh fuck, why did I do that? But looking forward to it. Looking forward to it. Yes, all good, mate.
Excellent. Right, so like Liam says, it has been a rather busy week or so for Hibs, and we're going to run through it in chronological order. Last time we spoke, we were chatting all about Nick Montgomery's future, and the next day he was sacked. And then just a matter of hours later, we appointed a new sporting director. Now, Liam, you sort of hinted towards that appointment incoming on Monday night's episode, but were you surprised with who the appointment was in Malky McKay, and what was your sort of initial thoughts?
Yes, a little bit surprised, but also we had also heard that it might potentially be him. But I think there's always still some surprise when there's an appointment like that, that perhaps you see some of the sort of pitfalls, shall we say, in said appointment. I think like anyone who follows me on Twitter's probably seen my view. I think it's an appointment that provides division at a time when we need unity. I think it's an appointment where you're hopeful, I think, of maybe someone better to do the role. And I mean better in a lot of senses, but probably the primary sense is in their qualification to do the role. I don't, from the face of it, really see what demonstrable experience he's got in that sort of sporting directorship role that makes me think he's going to be a success. But as with all these things, when you're sharing a negative or constructive opinion about Hibs, I hope I'm wrong. I hope he proves me wrong. He said some things in his interview that certainly seemed to impress people. There's a few things I jotted down that I must admit I thought were quite good sound bites. It'll just be how he sort of realizes that potential, I suppose.
Mm. Dave, just the same question to you. What was your initial take on it? It was
It wasn't really a surprise, to be honest. I think a few of us that are drinking the Albion had seen him around, all suited and booted, and our CEO was delighted to see him when he came in that day and was all over him. So I had said to a few people that I wouldn't be surprised if he came in, and sure enough, I think it was 2 or 3 weeks later it was announced. Uh, I think we all have the same concerns that everyone's raised, right? And I think all we can say from now on is he will be watched like a hawk from the outside world, and he'll need to be at the top of his game and prove that he's the right man for the job. Otherwise, the Hibs fans will very quickly. And despite the fact that there's been, plenty said on socials, etc., I think you'll hear a lot more if we don't see the changes that we're hoping to see. He does have plenty of good things to say, and there is. I get the whole thing about skills that he perhaps doesn't have that you think he should have for that role, but I think he'll probably claim that a lot of the stuff he did with SFA and etc., that he can shift over and use those skills to develop it here. I would have rather had somebody in with real sporting director experience, but as we say, we just need to keep a watching brief and see what happens. He'll need to get his finger out now. Like, for the first thing, he needs to get a manager in quickly. We cannot. We've got 8 weeks to the League Cup starts, and something like that. It's no long at all, right? So we need to get a manager in quick. We need to start building the squad out quick, and we can't wait until the League Cup starts, and then we're suddenly like playing them like friendlies. So full steam ahead.
Yeah. I think like that was the thing for me. I'd said on last week's episode that, when we were talking about the person that was going to come in that sort of sporting director capacity, the number one thing for me would have been I would have expected them to have previously hired someone, and that was for me almost like the number one. Like when you see anyone's, most people who have applied for a job before, and essential criteria like must-haves for me, like that would have been the number one thing. Like, have you got a track record of appointing managers and then being a success? Not sort of, not necessarily where they need to be. I can adjust this skill to, that shows I can do that or this. Like, and I even mentioned like Leanne Dempster last week that she came in as CEO having had a track record of decent spells at Motherwell under her stewardship where she'd been involved in the hiring of managers. So like it just, yeah, that obviously with everything else that's going with it, like much the same as you guys, the optics of it aren't great, are they? That's the thing, and it's not nice. But
I guess, where Dempster had successes is she surrounded herself with people who complemented the skills that she didn't have. So she had George Craig run the football operations. That's obviously what Hibs are trying to do by bringing McKay into the club. And whilst I can see some of that, I'm also seeing a lot of the same people saying we need a really experienced head coach who are saying they're happy with a really inexperienced sporting director. And if you listen to the last 3 or 4 weeks worth of podcasts, we have literally been talking about how we need to gut the squad, start again, bring in new players. It's probably, I can't imagine there'll be many more scenarios in Scottish football at the moment for a sporting director to come into a club that would be more challenging than the scenario they're coming into now. I don't know what you think, Dave, but like it's a huge job.
Aye, it's massive, and yeah, and we're all expecting so much change because of it, right? And that's the other concern. I'm led to believe he's signed some sort of 5-year contract, right? So it's obviously not seen as a short term gap, right? He's in here to like a 5-year running contract, and he'll have, like everyone else, he'll have the KPIs that he'll be expected to hit and all the rest of it, right? And it would be good to find out what they are and what Hibs expect out of him. It's what we never hear. Like we never actually hear what people's jobs are anymore from Hibs. It's just like, same with our recent director of football that wasn't really director of football and things like that, right? So it'd be good to get them to be really clear on what it is he's expected to do from Hibs. And yeah, the one thing I'll say about that thing about experience of hiring people, he will have that from the SFA, right? And I know it's a different world in the SFA, right? Because it's a lot of just, as long as you've got the badges, as long as you're not working, you get a job in the SFA, right? Simple as that, right? Because they're not huge money jobs, right? They're people that just love football, want to keep playing in it, want to get involved in it, want to keep coaching, right? And you hire people based on that. It's not like he's going out and getting the best coaches in the world and making sure he's got the best people.
Yeah.
But so he will have the experience of hiring people. I just wish it had been at a sporting director level.
That's it. Like, I don't think that it's that. I was going to say it's not relevant. Of course, it's relevant, but it's like I think I wouldn't necessarily feel comfortable with bringing someone in from, the finance industry that has just got a good record of appointing people. You know what I mean? Like I would have liked some sort of first team, like senior football experience in that. That was sort of just where I was at with it. But
all the evidence points to as well when you're doing hiring of any kind in any industry is you hire people to suit your type. So you'll typically gravitate towards someone because of certain biases that exist. You'll hire someone who is more like you and more in your mold. So perhaps the appointments that we've made in the past have been hires to type. So we've hired a type, presumably the first two, maybe the type that Kensal admired. The most recent one, potentially more Brian McDermott and sort of Nick Montgomery. McKay, you would hope, will at least come in and look to bring in a different type from a sort of footballing perspective. Whether that's a good thing or not, only time will tell, but at least I'm trying to find the positives because I've been criticised all week for not being positive enough about it. I suppose at least the positive is it'll be a different perspective on that whole hiring process and that discussion, while still having people who you would hope have learnt the lessons from the failings of the past as part of that discussion. Because let's be honest, they're failings.
Yeah, of course, yeah. Like you don't get through the rate of managers that we have in the last couple of years by being a success, unless you're a fucking roaring success and your managers are bugging it off every 6 months. But I think talking about looking for the positives on it, that was something where that attract, you get sort of past the initial fucking hell, like what the hell are we doing here sort of thing, and as the days progress, and probably post Motherwell game more so than I was thinking, like, rightly or wrongly, and regardless of any other opinions, in the sort of football folk ken or football circles, he seems very well thought of, and even just that, like, if I'm thinking that people think fondly of him, then that probably makes the role a little bit more attractive. If people think that he is someone of that football folk or whatever, like that sort of stereotypical, like, I've not really heard anyone in the media have bad things to say about him. Like, he's always sort of been pushed as a good candidate, as a not as a good football coach, as a good football manager and stuff like that. So I would hope that that in itself would potentially attract decent people to come to apply for it, that perhaps maybe would have actually looked at the role and went, that's a basket case, I don't want to touch that. You know what I mean?
But
Like,
commercially, could put people off as well, though.
of course,
It's a
of
double-edged
course,
sword.
of
There could be
course.
people look at it and go, "I'm not
Yeah.
working for him,"
Yeah.
and that's the reality of the situation. Like, he's a divisive figure, whether you like it or not.
Yeah.
Whether it was 10 years ago or not, it's still divisive what he did.
Oh, massive, of course, yeah, of course. I was just sort of looking at it from, like, what do the, and if you're not listening, sorry, if you're listening and not watching, I am doing air quotes, football people, what do they have to say about it? But just I can imagine, like, agents might like him, you know what I mean, like that sort of thing. But I yeah, look, I said we were going to do this chronologically, and then we went on to talk about a Monday evening announcement before a Monday morning announcement. But the reason I went for that is obviously David Gray was in charge on Wednesday night. And this is his fourth spell as caretaker manager. I'm going to read you off a list of names here that Pie and Bovril tweeted out this morning. This is from McBookie. There's been two names that one name that has been added to the list by gambling.com in the last hour, and also a name that's been shortened in the odds. But so this morning, McBookie, David Gray, Ian Murray, Scott Gemmell, Derek McInnes, Alex Neil, Kevin Thompson, Michael O'Neill, Stephen Robinson, Tommy Elphick, Liam Rosenior, Ronnie Dyler, Scott Brown, Damien Duff, Jim Goodwin, and Rhys McKay. But the name that's been added in by gambling.com at 12 to 1 is none other than Rangers and Sunderland failure, Michael Beale. Of all the names mentioned there, Liam, what is the one that jumps off the page to you? Maybe avoiding David Gray. Maybe we'll come on to a conversation about him separately. Is there any name that jump off the page? I'm asking you to pick one, but is there any?
Nah, I genuinely, none of them really excite me all that much. I mean, gun to head, probably, if he could work under the structure, Derek McInnes, but none of those names really get me excited, to be honest. Rhys McCabe, but I think it's too soon for Rhys McCabe. I think he needs another year or two. It needs to be completely done with playing as well. So yeah,
what about
none
Ronnie
of those
Dyler?
names.
Would that be?
Nah, not for me. I know a lot of people have been really up high on him, but I know he did have a little bit of success, obviously, with New York City, and I think did he win a cup in Belgium? Or
I think
I think he did
yeah.
okay in Belgium, but
I was reading earlier, I think it was
he was a
57% win ratio or something.
It was a car crash at Celtic manager. He only won the league because Aberdeen essentially bottled it 2 years in a row, with no other team in Glasgow in the league. So
Yeah.
no, I don't. Ronnie Dyler would not get my juices flowing, so to speak.
Yeah, Dave, I bumped into yourself on Wednesday before the game, and I think Derek McInnes was sort of at the tip of our tongues when we were talking about it. Is he still, is, like what Liam says, is he probably one that seems the most obvious for you, or do you have some
He is.
Finnish manager or something to tell us about?
I might have something in a second, right? He's the obvious one, right? Just because of the success he's had in Scotland, right? Relative success. And I can see why a lot of the fan base want him. He'd be safe, he'd be steady. He'll get us up there. He probably will get us top 4, top 5 most seasons, right? Without having to do, I think, a major clean out. He would just add, 3 or 4 a season and then just get us up there and we'd be constantly there. But I still think that Hibs fans would very quickly get pissed off with the football. Because I've watched plenty of Kilmarnock games and it's no great. We've beaten Kilmarnock a couple of times and, they're no amazing. They're better on their home pitch because they've got that stupid plastic pitch. But, I can see why people like him, right? His stats speak for themselves generally. On the rest of the list, I'm kind of the same as Liam. Nothing's nothing is really exciting on that list. Right? I did actually ask McBookie to add Neil Collins in a couple of weeks ago. And I've only put a wee fiver on that just for fun. Right? He's in there at 20 to 1 or something, or maybe even more than that
Was it
now.
Barnsley?
Yes. Watched a wee bit of his games. I quite like the way he plays. He might bring a couple of his ex-players with him. You never know. But the other one that I was looking at today, and I watched a couple of his things today, is Raphael Wiki.
Okay. And
He
speaking
was
of
the-
Wiki, I will be bringing that up as we speak.
So he was at the
He was
he was
mentioned
the
the
young
last
boys
time.
manager. He was the young boys manager for, I'm looking at his stats now, 88 games, right? Points per match, 1.97. Pretty decent. He's done some, he was a manager at Basel. He's at the start. Went to the USA, under 17s manager, Chicago manager. Relatively good stats. And he plays quite a solid 4-4-2 diamond, apparently. They like a press. They don't lose a huge amount of goals from what I can see from an initial look. And he's out of work. He was sacked quite surprisingly at young boys, despite, playing pretty good football and getting them in a good position. So it's one that's not currently on the list, which makes you think we're probably not even looking at him. And there's also that thing that I'm a little bit concerned about, that this thing about Scottish experience keeps getting peddled out, which makes me think they probably won't look at somebody like that. Right? And it will just be a case of, and this is why I'm worried, is I think it might end up being Scott Gemmell. Just because he is SFA, he knows our sporting director well. They've worked together for many years. Scott Gemmell's been in the SFA thing for a long, long time now. But he's got no club experience at all to talk about. So it's just it'd be a massive gamble, and it's not the safe, secure Scottish manager that people are wanting. So I don't know. I have a few concerns, and I'm really hoping that they bring something out of the hat, which is not currently in the top 10 on that list that way.
Yeah, so I'm just looking through sort of the replies that we had to our tweet earlier, Liam. A lot of Ronnie Dyler, a lot of Derek McInnes. I don't know if he's the Alan's just sent a picture saying this man, and I have to say I've not got a fucking clue who it is. He's got an Oxford United jacket on. I don't know if it's the current one.
It's the Oxford,
Liam Manning. Liam Manning.
The one before the one that
suggested
just
him
got them
before.
up. Yeah.
Right, okay. I'm just looking to see if there's any other ones. So obviously, your man Liam, he's getting a couple of shout outs there. Mr. Nutson.
What, Nutson?
Yeah.
Nutson for Nutson.
Are we planning another tirade on the bookies this year, or getting them?
I feel like the
3, 4,
campaign is.
5 to 1?
I feel like the campaign has been and gone. What I'm going to just let happen is just let it come to us.
Yeah.
Let him come to us. I think, he obviously turned down Ajax for a reason a couple of years ago. He's waiting on a big job. Now, I mean, I noticed that he's got Bodo Glimt back at the top of the league again, having won the league again last year. So, it would be fantasy stuff, but he's the kind of guy who's there to stay. He's not going to join a club that sacks the manager every 3 weeks. So,
yeah.
I think we can forget that one.
Speaking of some sort of fantasy stuff and turning Ajax down, I don't want to call Ian out like this, but we have had a Graham Potter suggestion, another man who did turn Ajax down just a couple of weeks ago. I don't think he sees his future in the Scottish capital. And unfortunately, Mel Clements and also Harry MacArthur, I don't think David Moyes probably sees his future in the Hibs gig. It wouldn't surprise me if David Moyes now went into just a broadcast career where he got paid rather handsomely. And probably a lot more than what he'd done for Hibs.
Was Alex Neil actually in the bookies rundown?
Yes,
he's in the top 12 or something. I think he's
10 to 1 on that list.
10 to 1, 12 to 1.
I know he stated he'd never work in Scotland, but I do wonder if that or doesn't want to work in Scotland right now. I do wonder if that'd be worth a revisit. Like, he's 3 promotions on his CV. Like, generally, apart from Stoke, which are a basket club, he's done well everywhere he's been. I don't hate the shout, and I think it's probably not the one that fans will really get on board. I don't actually hate Ian Murray's shout either. I don't. I think Ian Murray's done a good job everywhere apart from St Mirren. One bad club on your record out of 4 or 5. Did a really good job at Dumbarton to keep them. Look what happened to Dumbarton after he left did a really good job to keep them in the second tier. Has done well at Raith Rovers. I don't think they've been as outstanding as some people made out early in the season, but he's done well at Raith Rovers. I think he's someone who could work under that structure as well. And he's still quite a young progressive coach. But
he has certainly built his
it's not going to
career
excite
back
people.
up after the St Mirren, after the sort of
Yeah.
spell at St Mirren. Like he has, but I don't
Stubbs
think
been terrible at St Mirren, and people still hold Stubbs in high esteem. So
yeah, he's like second or third favourite, albeit like that. But I mean, that's someone could put 20 quid on someone, and their odds are probably sliced in half at this point. Like it's, I don't know. Again, it would be an interesting one. That is he probably wouldn't for me feature near the top of my list, but I've come to the conclusion that at the top of my list, I think Liam at one point last week had similar thoughts. Maybe probably doesn't now, and I know Dave, you have polar opposite thoughts. But I want David Gray to get the job because it'll make me fucking feel better. Okay, right? But that's what I'll do, and I'm going to put that out there. It'll make me feel better. All right, but genuinely. We spoke about this last week as well. I personally actually think just now would be the right time. I think if you're having 4 stints as a caretaker manager, you've served under 4 coaching staffs. I think now is that right? That he was in for Jack Ross, Sean Maloney, Lee Johnson. So like, why not now? Generally, I think it's stupid looking at his win-loss ratio when he's a caretaker manager, but it's decent in the game. I think he's lost a few, but 2 of them were to get Aston Villa and a League Cup final against Celtic, which actually performed okay in as well. Like, it would make me feel better, but I think like if we were going to go down a more rookie manager approach, then I would want it to be David Gray, because I think what it does is it unites the fan base in a time where, I don't know if the fan base are divided, but a lot of people are just a little bit fucking pissed off at the club. Like it would, and I would like, I've seen people say, and I replied to a tweet that I put out there, well, if he loses 6 games, his first 6 games, the fans would be on his back. But there's not a manager in the world that could get away with losing their first 6 games and people wouldn't be on their back. But if there's anyone that would actually have less of that than normal, it would be him. And I would also like to think that we just wouldn't lose our first 6 games under a new manager as well. But for me, that's the way I want to go. I think I'm ready for it. Liam, are you still towards that point? I think you said you'd convinced yourself of that just before the Motherwell game. Like,
I think the thing that worries me about David Gray is I would absolutely 100% get behind it. Obviously, I would. The thing that worries me about is the timing issue. Like, he'd be coming in at a time where we need a full scale rebuild to the squad. Is that really the right time for a head coach to come in? Big advantage that David Gray has is he has the respect to the players. Like, anecdotally, we know that he has the respect to the players. But if you're changing the entirety of the playing squad, that takes away, not entirety, but a huge part of the playing squad. It takes away one of the great advantages that he brings to the role, because he would have to gain the new respect of any new people that are coming in.
Does it also make the clear out easier though? Because he has witnessed for however many years that each individual player has been there. He knows the qualities of them. It's not a case of a new manager coming in and saying, everyone's getting a new chance, or I'm going to observe them in pre-season, and we're going into the first league game of the season still with a squad of 35.
Probably, but we would also potentially be too loyal to some that have been in the building for a long time, and actually what we need is less loyalty. Look, I'm not totally against that. I'm not. The more that people keep saying experience required, and I kind of think, well, actually, you've got a point here. If you look at, the managers in the league that have been successful, with the exception of Stevie Naismith, they've all been experienced, really, in some way or another. A number of years in a head coaching or managerial capacity. I agree with Dave though. I think this whole you need Scottish football experience just needs to be busted clean open. I just don't. Football. Like, yes, they need to have an appreciation of the nuances of the game up here, but that doesn't need to mean that you've got to have worked in Scottish football. I think head coaching experience is just as valuable wherever in the world you've worked.
Well, I'm going to say that Tory Mowbray, first managerial gig. Alan Stubbs, first managerial gig. So, fuck it, get into the rookies. Maybe we've just had shite rookies the last couple of years. Dave, 12 hours ago, in fact, sorry, 11 hours ago, is it all just head over heart for David Gray, or was Monty right and the squad just isn't very good? Any change of opinion in the last 11 hours?
Digging up my tweets, man. Need to get them blocked. Listen, I'm not massively against David Gray. I know you said I was the polar opposite of you. I don't think I am, to be honest. Right?
Okay.
I do think a lot of people's opinion, though, is heart over head because of what
Hold my
David
hands
Gray
up, and
means to
mine
this club.
absolutely is, and I'm just trying
Of
to
course
cut
it is,
reasons for it.
I totally get that, right? I totally get that, right? And it will get a lot of the fans on board. I have a similar concern to Liam around if you're going through a full rebuild, and I think that's what we need to do, right? Then I think you need somebody who comes in here with no background with the players at all and just knows from me, does his analysis, he's looked at the team, he's looked at the players, all the rest of it, right? And he just says, right, okay, I need 8 in this position, right? Bang, bang, bang. That's what I want. I want name out. They're not going to fit what I want to play, all the rest of it, right? Similar to what Monty was actually going to do, but obviously never showed enough to keep the gig. My other concern is because he's been at the club so long, and this might sound a wee bit the wrong way around, but it just because he's been at the club so long, and if we just made him manager now, my concern would be how much gravitas he has with the board and the people that fundamentally run the club.
Okay.
And that they'll just see him as a rookie manager that they've just moved up and given them a chance. Whereas someone that comes in with a fair bit of experience and is saying, right, okay, you're hiring me on a 3-year deal on X amount of money because you know I can do something, I think he'll get much more from the people that hold the purse strings than David Gray will. Right? I think David Gray would be told, oh, actually, we've only got $1 million now. You have to get 5 players on $1 million or something like that. Whereas another guy says, well, I'm not taking it if I'm not getting 3 million to spend. Right? That's my only worry is that Hibs could see it as a way to save a bit of cash when they've spent all their money on a sporting director. So,
so it's just on that point, Dave. So see if David Gray was appointed and things maybe didn't start going right, and it was kind of fairly clear, from a fan's point of view that we've maybe not spent the money we thought we would be able to spend this summer. I appreciate what you're saying with him being the internal hire, but being the person that he is to the fans, would that at that point, a lot of people are already wanting to, with the Montgomery thing, tank the pressure higher up and leave the manager in situ. If that was to arise with David Gray in position, I think people they would potentially even skip him out, and all the eyes would turn onto the board at that point. So would that offset that, or?
He'll probably get an easier ride because of that, right? So even if he does lose some games, it'll still be, oh, now it's all the board's fault, right? But it wasn't the board's fault when it was Nick Montgomery. It wasn't the board's fault when it was Lee Johnson. It wasn't the board's fault when it was the guy before that. It's just like at some point you have to realise it is the board's fault, right? And they've invested money in all the wrong places. And at the time when we should have been investing all the money in the first team, that was absolutely a board's decision, not a single manager's decision, right? So this all falls back on the board, no matter what happens, but who gets hired next and how they get on in that role.
Mm-hmm. Liam, do you have anything more to add to David Gray? I do know that you have someone ready for us, that we've sort of transitioned away from the other candidates too quickly, so feel free to take us back.
I don't think I'd add on David Gray. I think what would be hugely important of someone like him to get the job is, if someone like him is to get the job, would be the backroom staff that he'd like to bring in. I think simply just going with the continuity of people who are already at the club might not be sufficient to win us all round, and also I think give him the sort of depth of experience that he needs. I think he would need to bring in some perspective from outside the club. So perhaps a contact from earlier on in his playing career, or coach that he met on one of his licenses, for example. Because I think by appointing him and then him just essentially promoting a bunch of people.
Dan McGregor done.
I mean, they'd be fine to promote some of them. I have no issue with McGregor or Boozy joining the coaching staff whatsoever, but they need to bring something else in with you, I think.
A goalkeeping coach to start.
We should have kept that goalie coach. He seemed all right. Just kept him.
Is he a rogue shout?
No, he's no. Nah, I know in Espirito Santo's obviously a manager. I don't really think goalies. I don't know what goalies shouldn't be head coaches, should they? Really?
You said stay your lane. You're
a goalie. You're not a footballer. No offense to any goalies listening. No, I think my rogue shout. And listen, this is absolute fantasy, right? Because absolute top of the budget. But what a manager, right, who essentially has no blemishes on their CV and has won a league in his home country and is currently out of work and has been out of work for the last 12 months. Any ideas?
Can we get the country? Or is that too obvious?
Huge name within their own country. Dutch. Ruud van Nistelrooy.
I was going to say that Van
Absolute-
Nistelrooy. What league did he win?
Won the Eredivisie.
Did he?
Won it with
I mean,
PSV.
absolute
Oh,
fantasy
right.
shout. Absolute fantasy shout. He was only there for a year and he came in, won the league. Obviously served his time, like, coached right through the age grades at PSV, became assistant manager of the Dutch team, continued coaching then the PSV under 18s, under 21s. Look, it's absolute fantasy because of the kind of money he'd be
Along
commanding
with
on
Danny
to
Ward
manager.
goals on his 40 grand
But
a week
then,
salary.
to be honest, we would have thought Jon Dahl Thomason would have been fantasy as well, and we were obviously pretty close with him. Striker of sort of similar repute, I would say. Obviously, it's not quite worked out for Jon Dahl
You
Thomason
can see he's not in
either.
work,
So.
Liam. You know, 2 years ago?
He's
it
a
was
Sweden
someone-
manager.
Oh, is he? Oh, shit, I missed that.
Sweden
Oh,
manager.
sorry. Oh, God.
He got the Sweden job after he started by Blackburn, so he's not doing too badly.
Sorry, that did win. That was not on my radar. I just thought he was unemployed after Blackburn. It was something that I did that. Found myself looking out for Blackburn results just to compare how they were getting on versus how Hibs were getting on under Lee Johnson. Is that enough for you on managers? Just for me, it has to be a timely appointment. This cannot carry on. You know, like I think a clear sort of time stamp for me. Like the Euro still feels quite far away. I'd be really pissed off if Hibs didn't have a manager appointed by then. Like that, I do feel like we need to move with some haste. Like I would like to have this managerial appointment probably done by the end of the first week in June. Like
I think so. By the
Well,
first,
officially, our sporting director starts on the 1st of June, doesn't he? Right? That's the shite that keep going over, right? He starts till the 1st of June. So, yeah, it's got to be that week.
has to be.
It's got to be.
his pre-season will start end of June, if not before then. I would think.
But it needs
A
a
League
manager
Cup
needs
group,
to be in there. Yeah, he needs to be in there though, working with the sporting director, looking at who he wants. Right. That needs to be happening now. We can't be waiting until again a week before the League Cup again to start signing players.
League Cup group stages are the 13th, 14th of July, so the weekend of the final of the Euros, League Cup group stages. So they're going to have to be in by sort of 20th of June or thereabouts, I would imagine.
To have a good, and then you would want
and it's a lot of starters we need as well. That's the thing. It's a lot of starters you need. It's not just like filling in some gaps here and there. It's a lot of starters.
Yeah, I mean, we've still got to do our midfield and forwards episode on our transfer front after doing our goalkeepers and our defence, and that'll probably come next week before we take a well-earned break on the back of this season. But there is a lot of chat, obviously, with even some contracted players and some starting contracted players sort of this week that they might well be moving on from the club, and I would suggest that the hope of some loan players staying seems smaller now than it was maybe a month ago. So I think it'll be a totally different starting 11 on the first league game of the season, at least, versus probably even the 11 we seen yesterday at Ammonvale. And that takes us in already, actually, totally unintentionally. But we did sign off the season not in spectacular James Scott hat-tricks off his arse or 5-5s with Rangers. No, we produced a snooze fest of a 1-1 at the last ever top flight game and the last ever game at the Tony Macaroni. Liam, was there anything at all for you that you even had more than 30 seconds worth of fault on in that game yesterday?
Not really, to be honest. We had a wee flurry of chances at the beginning of the second half, I suppose, like if you're looking for something, but I mean, it was just, do you know what, it was just a typical Livingston away game.
Yeah.
Every game away at Livingston's like that. Even the days when we were down the Championship, with one notable exception, I think, the games were like that. I don't know it would be the Turn of the Bash Livy podcast, but I'm really not going to be sad to see the back of them. Not just for the reasons of what I think about the football club, but just generally how we've performed against them. Like our points total against them, for how many points they've picked up this season, is pitiful. I mean, they've four or 5 points from games against us this season, and they've only got about 18 points.
Hibs have the last 2 seasons, we have done our best to keep Livingston and Dundee United in the league. Like that's That's for sure. Dave, what about you? Did you take anything of note at all from yesterday's game? We have had some talking points come in, although albeit a lot of them are about the managers.
So I did think at the beginning of the second half that we were getting together and coming into the game, and there was a wee flurry of chances as Liam just talked about there. But a lot of players just look like they're trying to get away and not get injured and get on holiday, and I mean, from both sides, to be honest, I thought both sides were pretty poor. Our players, you can tell, absolutely hate that pitch. And they're just, every misplaced pass, every one that's overplayed or too much of a bounce on it, whatever, they're just, you can see them looking down, looking despondent, all the rest of it. But I thought Campbell was all right, again. Just picking up on the game he had on the Wednesday. I thought he showed a little bit again. He showed a little bit of fight, desire. I was surprised that Triantes played, to be honest. I thought it would have been a game for Mariah Welsh. I don't know if he's carrying injury again. We're looking after him, but just somebody that we could drive at them, because they're not very good in the middle of the park, and we just looked really. It looked like we were at like 50%, to be honest. A lot of that game, especially in the midfield, it just didn't look. We weren't that active, apart from Campbell doing a few wee runs here and there and doing little things off the striker. Venti had a poor game again, and it's getting a bit worrying, because I really like him, and I think he could score. On this podcast, we said he'll score dozens of goals given the opportunity, but we just don't seem to get him on the end of anything. And it's we've got millions of pounds worth of strike force here, and we cannot get a ball to him in most of the games. So there's something seriously going wrong with that, and we need to reevaluate that for next season. Otherwise, he'll be another one that'll be away. You're looking at a whole new strike force, by the way, at the moment. There's lots of rumours that Boyle might head off, right? I think it's pretty clear that Melita's going to go. I think it's very strong that Johan's going to go. There's a lot of players that are disappearing from this team.
It's a lot of goals.
Good luck to the guy that takes this role. I'm like,
can I just highlight something that Ewan said in the group chat yesterday, that I am, for one, really looking forward to McCurdy, Jair, and Venti starting up front in the first game of the League Cup group stages, because that's genuinely the position that we're in. Kyle McClellan, partner and Rocky, yeah. That is, I mean, yeah. We'll just leave it there, shall we?
Yeah, look, as I say about the talking points and stuff, it is really not anything really to do with the game, but there's been some of them, so I'm going to just chime through them and just come in on anything as you feel necessary. So Jane, best part of the game was seeing the younger kids dancing around in the sun singing Hibs songs. Well, that would be nice. That tells you a lot about the 90 minutes that was on the park, though. Tony Swan said it was a nothing game, hard for both teams to motivate, so not criticising them. Hard decisions coming for the board, and Tony then says he would like to see the managerial appointment ASAP before the sort of, I suppose we're in the summer break now, but before the summer break, otherwise it's going to be another season of transition, trying to get players in last minute. Dave, you had a wee moan about David Gray in the replies to this chat about saying if it was all head over heart. Still not changed. Jeff has said our three marquee signings, Ellie, Yuan, Levitt and Venti, have all been a bit of a mixed bag. Like you say, it looks like Ellie, Yuan's moving on. Should we cut our losses on the other two? We've had another point in as well around Dylan Venti from Stephen Liddell, saying if we could get a decent fee in, would we move him on as well?
I think just on the Levitt thing, I think we'll struggle to get much of our losses back, to be honest, because he's not performed, and whether we like it or not, again, as a player I thought would be decent in the correct system, but I just hadn't realised how little pace he's got. When he loses the ball, he's pretty much out the game. Right? And you see players running past him all the time. His own players running past him. So yeah, there's an issue there, and he's not a 10 in a million years either. So I just don't know where he'd fit in a Hibs team moving forward.
He's not a David Gray midfielder either, is he? Like David Gray favours a kind of workman-like sort of 2-8s that are going to do all the vertical running, and a 6 who's going to cover the space sort of players. And there's no space for Dylan Levitt in that team. I mean, there's quite a few players. I mean, Mariah Welsh not playing really any minutes the last couple of games has been a bit surprising. I thought it was odd yesterday that he only brought Lafondra and Jair, I think, were his two subs yesterday. And I thought that was, especially when Lafondra's not going to be here next season, I thought that was really odd.
Well, and that brings us on to a wee point here that Coach Pete Laird is sent in this, so no development players other than Johnson on the bench in a game that was effectively a dead rubber. David Gray did do that in one of his previous stints as a caretaker as well. Just don't understand the logic behind it. I mean, I suppose maybe it could be he's wanting to grind out the wins to build his case, but is it something you would have rather seen some younger players get the opportunity on the last day of the season, other than, I know he scored, but Maizani, who's obviously leaving the club on loan, like you say, Adam Lafondra, like, would you have preferred to see, I'm trying to think of players in their position that aren't on loan, but
I think I replied to that guy actually and said I think the vast majority are on loan or injured. And there isn't actually a lot of. I couldn't think of anybody who would be available right now apart from the young right back, the 16-year-old, whose name escapes me because I'm old.
Whitaker.
17-year-old Whitaker, yeah. I think he's the only one that's still, round about the squad. I think the rest of them are all away now. So yeah, there isn't anything there.
I mean, playing Wallace over Johnson's another really weird one that we've done in the bottom six as well. Because I mean, I'd be very surprised if Jojo Walcott's here come the 1st of September. So, I mean, what genuinely, what value are we getting from putting him in the shop window? There's obviously context you don't have. Well, exactly. It's probably decreased his value, if anything, if anyone's watched the games. Like, there's obviously context we don't have as fans, but when you finish 8th in the league and you've got 5 games after the bottom 6, it's an opportunity to obviously try some things and bring some players in. Kind of feels like we just sort of stuck to the tried and tested and failed.
Yeah. Good old day at Perth, though, eh?
Aye. Class. Aye. Great on them staying up, eh? Brilliant. Just what the league needed.
Aye. Another trip to Perth, dressed in all black. Won't be walking from the train station this time, no Liam. Two people that did feature in the last week that won't be at the club for the first time in a very, very long time. Obviously got their main send-off on Wednesday night at the Motherwell. Lewis Stevenson and Paul Hanlon. Quite an emotional night, I would say, is probably fair to say, on Wednesday night at Easter Road. Dave, I'll come to you first. You talk to me about Paul Hanlon and Lewis Stevenson and just how much they'll be missed at the club.
I think it's a massive miss for the club and for a lot of fans personally as well. Myself, I had to actually walk away on their second lap round. That was enough as they walked past. I said, that was it, guys. I need to go up to the bar now and wait for them to come back. Hibs without Hanlon is very, very odd for me because it feels like he's always been there to pretty much every single game. For some reason, I don't have the same connection with Stevenson. I think Stevenson's a wonderful player and a wonderful servant, but I've always had a bit of a man crush on Paul Hanlon. I'm not scared to admit it. And I still think he could do another season easy. And I think we've really fucked that up at Hibs. I think, there's still an opportunity that somebody comes in and says, no, we need him to just steady the ship, bring someone else in. If we start this season and we haven't signed a left-footed centre-back, then you can get rid of the sporting director then and there, right? Because it's just not good enough. So he's more than capable of playing at least under a year or two at this level. And if he wants to, I'm sure he'll have the opportunity to go to Dundee, Kilmarnock, something like that, right? I think Louis will take his rightful place at Wraith and still have another year or two there and get involved with coaching kids. I've heard that's what he wants to do. And what's the greatest thing about them is they're just two honest, hard-working professionals. No airs and graces, absolute wonderful human beings, all the community stuff that they do and all that kind of stuff, right? And just nice blokes. And there's not a lot of them in football, to be honest, right? Like, through all the years of playing football and all the rest of it, no one will ever have a bad thing to say about Paul Hanlon and Lewis Stevenson. So it's a very different Hibs without them.
Yeah. Liam, no, you can have your say and I'll have mine and we will go off into the sunset.
No, on Hanlon, I've had the pleasure of bumping into him quite a few times and probably burning his lug at times where he's not really wanted to engage in conversation, but he's always given me the time of day. Always taking 2 minutes out of his day to chat to me, and I've actually, I've probably grown to understand a wee bit more about his character, his personality. I think he's probably quite naturally quite a shy individual, maybe not the most maybe not the most probably kind of polar opposite to Ryan Porteous in some ways. You know, not the most gregarious of characters, and that's maybe meant that fans didn't understand him because he can sort of come across as quite aloof potentially. But I mean, as a player, again, not a player I've always loved or rated. I mean, some of my pals will tell you going back 10 years ago, I was probably screaming for him to get out of the team. But I think as I've got a wee bit older and maybe a little bit wiser, probably not much wiser in fairness, I've maybe appreciated a wee bit more what he brings to the team. Bit of presence, calmness, good on the ball. You know, just a very, very good servant, and you know, from what I can tell, a really good guy as well. So be really missed. And then Stevenson's a player I've always had an affiliation with. He's just my kind of player. He's just, you know, blood and guts. You know, he got every bit of. I think I always describe it as he's got every bit of ability out of his body that he possibly could. Like, you know, he's just absolutely maximised everything he's got. Not feared of a crunching tackle as well. Something I'm a big fan of, and again, not someone I've ever really spoken to, but always comes across as really down to earth and just an all round good guy. And it's a bit of a weird one. I mean, I'm kind of at that age where Stevenson's, I think, 2 years older than me. So, like, I kind of have grown up watching him right through really my whole adult life. Not really knowing anyone else. Like, not really. I can obviously remember a time pre Stevenson, but it feels like a very, very long time ago. And that's because it is a very long time ago.
Yeah, I mean, I'm obviously a couple of years younger than yourself, so like for me, like especially with the Lewis Stevenson fights, I do remember sort of Tony Mowbray's first season. I suppose his second season, so I think he'd made his debut that second season, but didn't really feature. But you know, you talk about the like people talk about what's the phrase, the core memories and all that. I genuinely have to really think about small memories of a Hibs without Lewis Stevenson in it. Whereas everything that sort of all of Hibs is to me is Lewis Stevenson featuring, and Paul Hanlon much the same. Obviously, he was only a couple of years behind him, and like for me, like what I think a lot of people can relate to, a lot of what Hibs fans can relate to. It's two players that have, you know, they've not had to look far for adversity in their career at Hibs. They've been wrote off probably on countless occasions from various managers that, but I've always sort of came back to prominence and earned their way back into the team. You know, Paul Hanlon was a player that was massively criticised before we got relegated, but when we got relegated, people then went, if he'd stayed fit, we wouldn't have went down. You know, and Lewis Stevenson, much the same. In that period of time, we hadn't really seen him play all that much sort of under Terry Butcher and stuff, and it was more as a central midfielder, and then he sort of almost felt like with Stevenson, you got like a second Hibs career after when Alan Stubbs came in, and yeah, the two of them for me, whilst they still feel like they're able to kick a football, I think they should be kicking footballs wearing the Hibs badge on their chest. That is. I know people will talk about sentiment and all of that stuff, but I don't care. Like that's fine. If it is sentiment, like I know if or at least we should be offering them the platform to do it. If they see their careers and their futures elsewhere, then that's fine. You know, if they, you know, we can't promise them the guarantees of minutes and stuff that they want, then that should. But I certainly didn't get the impression, especially from Paul Hanlon, that he wanted to be anywhere else other than Hibs. And Lewis Stevenson, maybe just looking at it, you know, as like Dave says, I think he probably will end up at Raith Rovers, and it might only be a 1 year thing or whatever. But I don't like it. I was quite sad about the whole thing, really, on Wednesday night and into Thursday. And yeah, it is a shame that they won't be around next year. And you know, you listen to them talk after the games and stuff, and they're true people that fundamentally get it. And especially Lewis Stevenson, when he spoke about we need someone to come in and galvanise the club, and you know, they are two guys that would have played a part in that had they still been here, I think, and making sure new players get it and new management staff understand it. But unfortunately, they won't be here. But two unbelievable players for Hibs that, you know, that's the thing I think that can't go missing at all. But it'll be weird next season, shan't it, boys? But do you have anything else to add, Liam? I see you've just sent a wee message in there before we dash off.
One last shout for the manager. Do you think Scott Parker's realistic?
No, probably not. Did the Black Knights not punt him after being in the door about 2 minutes upon it?
Aye, but maybe they decide he's good enough for Hibs.
I don't think it's
what's making you think of that? Just because you've seen the name and all the rest of it, or are you actually thinking there's something behind it?
Just verbal diarrhea, Dave. To be quite honest, nothing more than that. No, I'm just, do you know what? I'm just looking for inspiration. There's just very little
I was looking at him
inspiration.
earlier. I
Mm.
went through that and I looked at Scott Parker and looked at his stats are decent, right? And he played a decent level, managed a decent level. So, I
I
wouldn't
mean, I would
be
take it. I
put
just
off
don't
with
think
him.
it's. Didn't he go to? Did he go to Belgium? Did he go
I
down?
had a bit of a near at Club Brugge, I
Went
think.
badly. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
And he
Well, maybe
wears
so.
really good clothes. So like this is like Jack Ross levels, and this guy comes in like he wears like £1,000 jumpers and stuff, right? It's like
Yeah.
different world.
Liam
I've got-
Rosenior would be the one for me, but I think
Oh.
he's a shoe-in to go and get the Norwich job, or maybe even the Ipswich job if Kieran McKenna goes to.
I think he's the favourite for Norwich, right?
Yeah, so that would make me think. And obviously, Dave, you're on record as Norwich being a massively
Huge club.
bigger club than
Huge club.
Hibs,
Liam knows that. He's left.
Can I just say I touted Kieran McKenna 2 years ago as well? Remember, I know we touted about 100 names every time
I was
manager
gonna
comes
say,
in,
like...
but I did
You
tout
mentioned
Kieran
them all. We'll
McKenna.
get one.
You get one right. I think the other one I would want to throw in, but I was a wee bit nervous about throwing it in because he did do a really bad job at Birmingham City. Is Aitor Karanka, former
I
Real
thought you were
Madrid
going to say
defender
Wayne Rooney
and former Real Madrid defender, and obviously got that promotion with Middlesbrough on his CV. I think he's done a good job at couple of clubs he's been at since as well. Looks like he left Maccabi Tel Aviv last summer. Obviously a difficult situation there.
Just something that's breaking, right? And it could mean absolutely nothing. But yeah, the Hibs Observer boys have just put up another pro David Gray story in the last 20 minutes. Is it time at last for Hibs to turn to David Gray? Now, I'm not putting two and two together, but
the PR spin started.
The PR spin has started.
Or it's just trying to gauge fan sentiment on whether or not we think it is the right time in response to the article. Because I think that's definitely the thing. Whether it's something Hibs do or not, I'm not sure, but I'm fairly certain most football clubs leak a little bit of information to gauge sentiment of fans before making announcements. It's a pity we've not done it with some of the other appointments.
I'm not so sure about that, Liam.
Depends who to talk to.
Oh dear. Well, it'll be interesting. We will have at least one more episode before we wrap up for summer. We do have to finish our summer rebuild for the Hibs, looking at the midfield positions and the forward positions. Will we do a season review? Who knows? Probably fucking not.
You're no factoring the fact we're going to have to do a new manager episode as well, and then a new signings episode the next episode. I thought we were going to get about 6 weeks off during the summer, but given that we'll be appointing a manager fairly soon, I would imagine not. We'll have to do something.
I'll send you the new number 10 that I've got for you. You can do the analysis.
I'm budgeting on Hibs not getting their act together until the middle of June. So our summer break is going to be the last week of May and the first week of June. That's what I'm going for, William. And then we can talk transfers all summer. All the pointless stuff that, you know what, is actually a lot more enjoyable than the actual stuff that's produced on the game, on the pitch, sorry, on the Saturdays. However, I did mark in the calendar the weekend of the 3rd and 4th of August today to make sure no plans were booked in, taking over both days, saying Hibs' first league game of the season, to make sure nothing was booked in. I went on the SPFL website, so already looking forward to next season, as we always are. But we will be back next week for sure, and then who knows where we'll go after that. Cheers!
See ya.
Cheers, guys.